over 14 years, Xi's rolled out doctrine after doctrine meant to guide the world. But inside the party, though, those doctrines have actually taken heavy criticism, especially on the economy and foreign policy.
Now Wang Yi has personally extended the invitation himself, and word is that Zelensky might visit too. That tells you Beijing already knows this align with Russia road is a dead end.
This whole shift in the relationship between Russia and Ukraine is a real sign that Xi's entire foreign policy line may be about to take a major turn. Russia, once a dominant power in the East, now sends nearly 40% of its trade to China, while China's dependence on Russia sits at under 10%.
Right before the Beidaihe meeting, this article resurfaces, a message sent in advance to the outside world and to the party that Xi's approach isn't working anymore, and it's time for someone else to clean up the mess.
This diplomatic pivot is really a reflection of a power struggle and a line struggle inside the CCP itself. From all of these various shifts happening inside China's whole foreign policy establishment, you can genuinely and clearly see that Xi's own standing may really be starting to shake. Hello everyone, welcome to PinnacleView. I'm Xi Shan. For the past few years, the CCP's leanings in the Russia-Ukraine war have been crystal clear, backing Russia's push to crush Ukraine. But just recently, that policy may actually be starting to shift a little. Wang Yi has kept up steady, ongoing contact with Ukraine's foreign minister, and there's even word going around now that Zelensky himself might visit China soon. Over 14 years, Xi Jinping has rolled out a whole raft of doctrines meant to light the way for the world. But inside the party, those doctrines have taken heavy criticism, especially on the economy and foreign policy. This shift in the Russia-Ukraine relationship really highlights a bigger change brewing in Chinese diplomacy overall. A clear sign that Xi's whole foreign policy doctrine, his whole line, may be about to take a major turn. Today's guests, veteran media commentator Ms. Guo and independent producer Li Jun. Before we start, a quick word from our sponsor, Puritang's Black Ginseng. Black ginseng as a food is seen as a rare and precious wellness item, prized for generations. And just recently, quite a few customers have gone out of their way to send Puritang their feedback after trying it. One customer, a Chinese American living over in the States, rushed all the way back home the moment he heard that his mother back in China wasn't doing so well health-wise. So he brought her Puritang's Black Ginseng all the way from America with him and had her drink 2 full packets of it every single day without fail. It's an oral liquid, 9 times steamed, 9 times sun-dried black ginseng. After a while, his mother's energy, stamina, and day-to-day mobility all noticeably improved. Now she's not just getting out normally, she's walking regularly, even exercising. The family was thrilled to see her recover so well. Another customer had colon cancer surgery in the US and was left extremely weak afterward. After sticking with Puritang's Black Ginseng for a while, he says his stomach cold symptoms, that cold, weak feeling in the stomach, improved dramatically. His appetite and energy are much better than before. Friends who saw him said he looked rosy and healthy, not like someone just out of major surgery. There's plenty more feedback out there, just like that one, honestly. So many stories. In Chinese medicine terms, when your body's vital energy has been drained and depleted like that, you really need deep, thorough conditioning. Then black ginseng is truly the very best product for that kind of thing. We do need to say this clearly, though this isn't medicine of any kind. It's strictly a nutritional supplement. Everybody's body and situation is different. So, of course, the results people get from black ginseng are going to vary quite a bit from person to person. And advertising law actually requires us to make absolutely clear that we are not selling drugs here at all. Now, if you're thinking about going right ahead and ordering some of Puritang's Black Ginseng for yourself, just remember, when you get to checkout, to enter our exclusive PinnacleView promo code, that's JYLT, spelled out, the first letters of the show's Chinese name, and you'll get completely free shipping anywhere in the world, no matter where you are. There are even more perks on top of all that too. Spend $500 and you'll get a whole free ginseng root thrown in as a gift. Spend $3,000 and you'll get an extra premium grade root as well. Deals as good as this really don't come around very often at all. If you need it, don't miss out on this chance. All right, now let's get back to our discussion on foreign policy. Ms. Guo, the way I understand it, looking at the big picture, Xi's diplomatic doctrine really comes down to all-out confrontation with America and the West. So the concrete strategy has been teaming up with countries like Russia, Iran, and North Korea, while at the same time going on the offensive against the US or against Japan, right? That's really shown up very clearly in the Russia-Ukraine war. over these past few years, hasn't it? For years and years now, the CCP has consistently, steadily been backing Russia and pressuring Ukraine, right? But lately, it really feels like people are sensing that policy is starting to shift somehow. Is that right?
Right. For 3+ years, Xi's line has been aligned with Russia, counter America. Russia, Iran, North Korea, that's one bloc. And the logic behind it is tie down America and the Western camp at any cost. But this recent string of moves tells us that line is now being forced to bend. Take this, for instance. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Beidaihe confirmed it himself, that Wang Yi took the initiative to invite him. He made a point of stressing it was Wang Yi's initiative. That kind of thing is genuinely unheard of in 3+ years of this war.
Wait, so is he saying Zelensky himself wants to visit China?
He's the foreign minister, the FM goes first. Right, and you have to understand, in the past, Beijing's diplomacy toward Ukraine was basically just going through the motions, stalling. It never sent a signal like this before. Right, and now Wang Yi has personally extended the invitation, and word is that Zelensky himself might visit too. That tells you Beijing already knows this align with Russia road is turning into a dead end. This line's been in place for a while. Before Russia invaded Ukraine, Putin met Xi and the two declared a partnership with no limits. Right. What really tore the mask off, though, was an investigation published on July 9th. Russia's own outlet, The Insider, together with Germany's Der Spiegel and France's Le Monde, jointly exposed a whole batch of classified military cooperation documents. These particular documents actually trace back to two separate things: a secret negotiation that was held in Moscow back in June of 2023, and also the third China-Russia Military Technical Cooperation Forum, which was held out in Guangzhou that November. It spells everything out very clearly, that China isn't just some rhetorical back-to-back partner anymore. It's real, hands-on joint weapons development, including work on how to counter Elon Musk's Starlink system, how to jointly develop things like air defense and missile defense systems, drone swarms, armored vehicles and military avionics. All of it, really. Once these documents finally came out into the open, Xi's real role behind this entire war was suddenly sitting there in black and white for the whole world to see. Right. Xi is clearly not just some bystander here. He's the real key backer of this entire war, the boss standing behind Putin. So Xi's whole foreign policy is now clearly being reversed, and not because he actually wants to change it, but because pressure from both inside and outside is forcing his hand. Foreign capital pulling out, the economy sliding, Europe and the US ready to pile on more secondary sanctions at any moment. The anti-Xi camp inside the party sees all of this very clearly. Wang Yi's invitation to Ukraine's foreign minister is really just the very first tip of this whole iceberg.
Right. So besides the economy, is there a diplomatic reason behind this too? What kind of pressure is Xi actually under that's forcing him to make this move?
First of all, Russia itself simply can't hold on much longer. This war's dragged on for 3+ years now. Russian equipment losses and casualties have already blown well past what Putin originally expected. The economy is completely paralyzed by sanctions at this point, just gasping for air, and the ruble itself is just barely managing to hold on as it is. And these leaked defense documents really spell it all out plainly. Russia supplies the real, actual battlefield data straight from Ukraine, while China supplies the electronics, the semiconductors, the precision machinery, and of course the money. That division of labor alone tells you exactly who's doing the bleeding and who's doing the transfusion.
Right, so that's essentially how the two sides have been quietly working together on this.
Exactly. Russia's reached the point where it can only keep fighting this war with regular transfusions from China. As an ally, Russia's gone from being an asset to being a genuine liability for Beijing. So the second point, and the most critical one, is that Xi's own grip on power is loosening across the board. He's not the untouchable strongman he used to be. In the past 6+ months, 5 of the 7 members of the Central Military Commission have fallen, even figures at the level of Zhang Youxia and Liu Zhenli, so the military is no longer his to command alone. Inside the Politburo, at last year's year-end Democratic Life meeting, Xi himself was called out by name 11 times, a sign that loyalty within the party is already cracking. Whether he even gets re-elected at the 21st Congress is now an open question. Given all that, the promises he made Putin, military tech cooperation, economic support, he no longer has the capacity or the nerve to fully deliver on. Third, Belarus's President Lukashenko just made a trip over to Beijing. Most people outside see it as him lobbying on Putin's behalf, pushing Xi to deliver and fast on everything he originally promised.
But going back to it, what was the single most important thing he'd actually promised? Wasn't it money?
Money and equipment purchases. We'll get to all of that in a moment, but going forward, what Xi can actually deliver is extremely limited now, because his own power is limited. He's got fires burning all over his own house, and he simply has no energy left to. Go pull Putin's chestnuts out of the fire for him. So on top of inviting Ukraine's foreign minister, Beijing has also gone ahead and issued Moscow something close to an ultimatum against ever using nuclear weapons. Behind all this, really?
Yes, that's exactly the report.
What's really behind all of these moves isn't some deliberate, considered policy shift at all. It's a forced retreat, driven by triple pressure. Xi's own weakening grip on power, a tightening fiscal squeeze, and losing his grip on the military.
I think we really need to be clear on one point here about Zelensky and China, and this nuclear weapons report you mentioned earlier. That claim actually came straight from Ukraine itself. Ukraine is saying that Beijing told them privately, behind closed doors, that it firmly and clearly opposes Russia ever using nuclear weapons on the Ukrainian battlefield. Zelensky said that China, for the very first time ever, using language that came remarkably close to an outright ultimatum, made it unmistakably clear to Moscow that it firmly opposes any use of nuclear weapons whatsoever. And it's not just Ukraine's word for it either. Yeah, plenty of Western intelligence and media channels back this up as well.
So the logic here is actually quite clear. Xi hasn't suddenly grown a conscience, and he hasn't turned against the war either. He's simply scared, because if Putin ever gets cornered enough to actually use tactical nuclear weapons, NATO steps straight into this war. And once that happens, Europe's entire security framework collapses completely. China would then face utterly unprecedented isolation on the world stage, followed immediately by devastating economic sanctions. If that happens, it directly threatens the CCP's own survival, like the sweeping sanctions after Tiananmen in '89. So this nuclear red line ultimatum looks like it's about reining in Putin, but really it's Beijing protecting itself. And that just proves the point. This so-called no-limits partnership between China and Russia already has real cracks in it.
Right, and here's something we've all actually been discussing quite a bit just lately, honestly. Before Putin ever even invaded Ukraine in the first place, he actually had a secret meeting with Xi over in China beforehand, and the two sides came out afterward and jointly declared that whole famous no-limits partnership of theirs, remember? After the invasion, most of us assumed Beijing would make its own move on Taiwan. Everyone thought the Taiwan Strait was the most dangerous flashpoint, but it never happened, and that's tied to changes inside the military. That's certainly a big part of it, yes, definitely. So it really does seem like Beijing has also quietly noticed that Russia's in some serious trouble and has already started preparing behind the scenes for some kind of eventual Russian collapse. Would that be a fair read of it?
Back on July 14th, the Wall Street Journal actually ran quite a lengthy, in-depth piece titled "China is preparing for a post-Putin Russia," genuinely worth reading in full. It's a genuinely heavyweight piece of reporting. It really lays bare the true colour underneath this whole so-called no-limits partnership, once and for all, for everyone to see. The report makes it very clear that for years now, Beijing has quietly been widening the range of its contacts, not just dealing with Putin's own inner circle, but actively reaching out to regional Russian officials and to the elites who might eventually hold power after some leadership change in the Kremlin. In other words, Beijing never really put all of its chips on Putin alone.
This particular article is honestly pretty brutal, you know, when you actually read it closely. Its analysts describe Russia's entire future relationship with China as fundamentally one of dependency. And you know what comparison they actually reach for to describe it? Pakistan and Laos, believe it or not. So basically, picture a supersized version of Pakistan or Laos. And if Putin himself ever actually read that comparison in print, there's just no way they could possibly swallow that, I genuinely think. Right?
Putin actually is a genuinely very proud man. He simply cannot stand it. If he feels someone beneath his level tries to humiliate him in any way, that's something he finds completely intolerable. That's exactly how his whole feud with Zelensky got started too, you know? In his mind, you used to be Russia's little brother, so how dare you disrespect the big brother now? Furious, yeah, genuinely deeply furious. I think hearing this kind of talk about China honestly puts him in a similar place. He hasn't broken with Beijing outright yet, but we're getting close to a real tipping point. There's already a voice inside Russia saying the CCP isn't a partner. They're just profiteering off Russia's troubles, right? That's already a consensus forming there. What an authoritarian regime fears most isn't outside pressure, it's infiltration from within and being publicly diminished. The Sino-Soviet split is the lesson sitting right there. Once one side starts poaching the other's elites and grinding them down economically, the break usually comes right at that boiling point of resentment. I actually remember saying once a while back that the day the Russia-Ukraine war finally ends is the very day China-Russia friendship ends too. Now it looks like the war's not even over yet, and the two of them might already be headed for a break, wouldn't you say? They can't even close a gas deal. What no-limits friendship? It's a lie.
China's actually been pushing pretty hard on trade with Russia for quite a while now, right? But these days, bilateral trade between the two has basically stopped growing altogether, hasn't it, pretty much? There used to be a lot of genuine Russian goods here. Now it's flooded with fakes, fake Russian milk powder, all sorts. The real trade's basically dried up, hasn't it?
After the war broke out back in 2022, Western sanctions cut Russia off entirely from the European market, and China very quickly became its single biggest trading partner. Russia, for its part, also complains quite a lot about Chinese knockoffs of Russian products. Fake Russian milk powder, fake Russian sausage, all sorts of things like that. You name it, it's all out there now, everywhere. Either way, it's hit Russia pretty hard. And out in the Far East, even as Chinese investment keeps growing, Moscow still genuinely worries about being infiltrated. Bilateral trade between the two has now moved well past its brief initial sprint phase and settled into more of a structural plateau at this point. A relationship between two nationalist status powers like these is fundamentally transactional at its very core. Once the underlying interests change, the relationship itself changes right along with them.
This year, after Trump paid his visit to Beijing, didn't Putin turn around and rush over to Beijing right after him? And once there, he ended up signing a whole stack of various agreements with China, didn't he? And then there's the really big one. I know for a fact that Russia was genuinely eager, desperate even, to lock in that Power of Siberia 2 gas deal once and for all. But instead, Beijing went ahead and handed out a whole pile of feel-good face-saving projects instead. School partnerships and things along those lines. And those all got signed without a single moment's hesitation. But the one thing that really truly mattered, the actual gas deal, that Ms. Guo is exactly the one thing they couldn't manage to close.
Right. When Putin personally travelled to Beijing back in May, this was really the one single thing on his mind the whole time, locking down that Power of Siberia 2 pipeline deal once and for all. The Russian delegation actually arrived in Beijing well ahead of schedule, with Gazprom's own chief executive, Miller, personally leading the whole team. That alone shows you just how badly Moscow wanted this deal done. So why all the urgency? Because Russia's lost its big European market, and its pipeline gas now has nowhere left in the world to go. All that infrastructure that was originally built to pipe gas over to Europe is now just sitting there, completely useless. And Russia badly, urgently needs some kind of new outlet. Just do the actual math on this for a second. Russia goes and builds a pipeline stretching that whole enormous distance purely just to end up selling the gas to China at an outright loss. Selling at a loss? How is that even doing business? It's practically Russia handing gas to China for free.
Here's the thing. The cost of Russian pipeline gas landing at the Chinese border is around $120 per 1,000 cubic meters, selling it to China for $50. How does that make sense? So Russia was furious, genuinely angry this time.
What makes it worse? China won't budge on price and is being hard-nosed about it. Take it or leave it. They flat out told the Russian delegation, until you agree to our terms, don't even bring this project up again. Sit with that phrase for a second. That's not haggling back and forth at the negotiating table anymore. That's slamming the door shut entirely. It's basically telling Putin flatly, my price or absolutely nothing at all.
That's the old Cantonese saying, when you're sick, that's when I take your life.
Russia's boxed in, locked out by Western sanctions, lost the European market, no alternative outlet for its energy exports. Its leverage just keeps shrinking. China knows perfectly well that Russia has no other buyer to turn to right now. There's really nowhere else in the world for it to go. This is exactly the kind of leverage China loves. Beijing doesn't need to be polite. It just squeezes the price to the bone, which confirms exactly what we said earlier about the core of this negotiation. This really isn't 2013 anymore. Back when Xi first visited Russia and Putin was held up publicly as a role model in a relationship of equal partners. The positions have completely flipped now. Putin's become the one asking for favors while China just sits back, waits patiently for him to ask and then names whatever price it wants. The balance of power shifted and the relationship shifted with it. Clearly the CCP is already preparing for a Russian collapse, for a post-Putin era.
Right, Xi's real underlying goal really comes down to this idea of the East rising, the West declining. America's in decline, Europe's in decline, China's on the rise. That's genuinely his whole worldview. So he genuinely sees himself as leading a whole new world order, building out this so-called community of common destiny of his. And Xi has already gone a very long way down the road of teaming up with Iran, with Russia, with North Korea, all against America together, including actively infiltrating America itself. And that has completely, thoroughly wrecked the entire US-China relationship. The Senate's already labeled the CCP a criminal organization, calling Xi the world's biggest con man. If the Russia-Ukraine war ends, there's a real chance Russia pivots toward America. And that goes for countries across the Americas, Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, ASEAN too. America's goal here is very clear. The CCP itself is the enemy.
So, Ms. Guo, what you're seeing is that there's a real, genuine consensus inside America on this front, no matter how much Congress fights and bickers over any other piece of legislation, and it never seems able to pass anything at all. Anything that has to do with China, with the CCP specifically, somehow always gets bipartisan consensus. So the key thing right now is, it's not that Xi doesn't want to carry out his grand strategy, it's that he's currently facing very widespread criticism inside the party itself, on both the diplomatic front and the economic front. Isn't that right? So Ms. Guo, what's your take on this?
Well, back on July 13th, People's Daily's front page actually carried a message that I genuinely think is very important, a real signal worth paying attention to. So I really want to walk everyone through this article carefully, step by step. The piece is titled "The General Secretary's Feeling for the People," and on the surface it reads like standard flattery, how Xi cares deeply for ordinary people, how he inspected grassroots communities down in Shanghai, looked into elevator retrofits for old buildings, that sort of thing. But the real point is actually buried inside one quoted passage in the piece, something Xi himself said last December at the Politburo's Democratic Life meeting, that communists are materialists and must seek truth from facts, be practical and get real tangible results. Think about it for just a second here. That particular meeting actually happened over 7 whole months ago by now. So why on earth dig this particular quote back up now on July 13th of all the possible days and go and run it on the front page tied to his Shanghai trip? Nothing about any of that is a coincidence, honestly. It's a deliberate signal being sent inside the party.
Because that specific phrase in the headline, "Seek truth from facts," actually carries a very special coded meaning inside the CCP. That's the meaning, yes, exactly.
Right, in the CCP's own political language, that phrase, "seek truth from facts," theme has never once been used simply for flattery. It has a very specific, deliberate purpose. Historically, that phrase has always been the opening line of a line struggle, political shorthand for self-criticism, for correcting a wrong path.
It's actually a phrase that stands in direct opposition to things like great leader or brilliant leader. One side is essentially saying, whatever I say goes, my word alone is truth. The other side counters with, no, seek truth from facts, be real, be practical. So whenever these particular words show up in party media like this one, it's usually a pretty clear and reliable sign that someone out there actually has an issue with the top leader. That's really how it's always worked in the past, historically, hasn't it always?
Right, like in 1978, when Deng Xiaoping used practice as the sole criterion for testing truth to knock down Hua Guofeng's 2 whatevers. Same logic, same language. And now, People's Daily has gone and taken that exact same logic and pointed it straight right back at Xi himself, using his own words to demand that he go correct his own course. That's what people outside call waving the red flag to oppose the red flag. And if you dig deeper, that Democratic Life meeting the article brings up wasn't an ordinary meeting to begin with. Word actually got around quite widely inside the party about this. Everyone knew that meeting ran unusually long, stretching from the usual half-day session into a full day and a half. According to what's being said about it, Xi himself was criticized by Name 11 separate times, Tsai Chi 6 times, Wang Huning 4 times, and Li Chiang once. A meeting on that kind of scale really isn't routine business as usual. It's much closer to a forced political showdown. And of course, right after that came the incident involving Zhang Youxia. But before that, back in late December, Zhang Youxia held enormous power. He was, in effect, undermining the CMC chairman responsibility system.
He said trampling on it, you mean? Right, exactly that.
Trampling the chairman responsibility system. And Zhang Youxia was actually at that meeting, running it. So the fact that this meeting's content is now resurfacing on People's Daily's front page, that's an extremely sensitive signal. The top leadership all know exactly what this really means, of course. So the fact that People's Daily is bringing this whole thing back out more than half a year later, at precisely this particular moment, that's clearly some faction inside the party using state media's own mouth to reopen an account from last year's meeting that was never fully closed out. So the article is really arguing for collective leadership, emphasizing seeking truth from facts. The subtext, Xi's approach these past years at politics in command, ideology first, treating diplomacy and national security as top priority, has cost too much. The economy's collapsed, foreign capitals fled, and it's time to turn back. So that lines up exactly with what we're discussing today. This loosening, this turning point in foreign policy. The timing matches perfectly. So in the past, foreign policy was really and truly Xi's own personal stage. His alone, aligned with Russia, counter America, and back then absolutely nobody ever dared to question him on any of it. But now the CMC's collapsed, the leadership team's collapsed. All that's left is him and Zhang Shungmin, who handles discipline. He can't hold on to the military anymore. And even the promises he made Kim Jong-un, he can't deliver on those either. So my read is can't deliver. Right, can't deliver. My read is whether she even gets re-elected at the 21st Congress is genuinely an open question now. So this front page article really isn't some isolated random event at all. It's part of a whole combination of coordinated moves, and people inside the political system read it very, very easily. And with this coming right before the Beidaihe meeting, it's basically a message sent in advance to the outside world and to the party that Xi's approach isn't working anymore, and it's time for someone else to clean up the mess.
Right. Going back to that piece, the one in the Wall Street Post, that article raises something I think is genuinely very important, that China's been broadly and systematically reaching out to political and economic elites inside Russia. That's honestly a deeply taboo thing to do, especially for a country with an authoritarian system like that. And there's actually a specific historical name for this kind of thing. In old China, when you signed all sorts of deals with outsiders like this, it's called Zhaojiang, enticing defectors, harboring turncoats. It basically means if you're unhappy with me, go ahead and run over to the other side, that sort of thing, which is exactly why I keep thinking this whole relationship really can't last very much longer. Once, like Li Jun was saying, the Russia-Ukraine war actually and finally ends, I genuinely think China-Russia relations are headed for real trouble. Beijing reaching out to Ukraine, warning Russia off nuclear weapons, even positioning itself early for a post-Putin era. All of that just proves Beijing already thinks Putin might not make it, and it's already quietly looking around for who comes next. I'll tell you straight. This shows that Xi's whole align with Russia, counter America line is running into some genuinely serious resistance. And behind it all, the two biggest complaints against Xi inside the party remain the same too, the economy and foreign policy. And of course, the two are linked. The diplomatic piece is really about America, right? Mainly the relationship with the US. So this diplomatic pivot isn't just about a changing world. It's really a reflection of a power struggle and a line struggle inside the CCP itself. So we've genuinely reached a real serious crossroads here at this point. In the party's own language, this whole question of which way forward. And that's something the CCP now genuinely has to take very seriously indeed going forward. So I think looking closely at these various shifts happening inside China's whole foreign policy establishment right now, you can genuinely see that Xi's own standing may really and truly be starting to shake a little. All right, everyone, that's all for today. Thank you very much to our guests, and thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.